Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fiume, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the president and CEO of Mokas Coffee and Eatery, Jason Ingermanson, and I have my co-host for today's show, my good friend, Drew Alfano. Let's bring Drew on first. Drew, what's going on?
What's going on, Frank? Thanks for having me back.
It's great to have you on again, Drew. All right, well, I think we've got a great episode. This one is totally different than what I've done in the past. This is not just a founder of a franchise. This is a powerhouse, someone who's been in franchising a long time as a multi-unit franchisee. And I think this is going to be a really different kind of episode than we've done in the past. Well, Drew, one more thing I want to ask you. I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about what's going on and some of the things that you're working on.
Sure. So just background on myself for everybody. Been in the franchise space for about 6.5 years. I'm director of business development at Retro Fitness, so overseeing franchise sales there. Certified franchise exec with the IFA, and then I run a young professionals group, I guess you can call it. It's called Fire 35. It's franchise industry rising executives under 35. So great group for people who are learning to just collaborate and network, build their Rolodex, and drink the Kool-Aid of franchising because it's such a great industry, and we want to make sure so many people can be involved for the next generation. So fire35.com is where you can sign up and join and meet everybody, and excited to have that piece. And thanks for letting me talk about it.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan and I love what you guys do. So kudos to you guys.
Absolutely. And I'm excited for this conversation. I think this is going to be a really, really fun one.
Before we bring on today's guest, here are 3 things you'll learn. 1, how a farm kid turned a 400 square foot coffee shop into a thriving hospitality group. 2nd, how Mocha stands out in the very crowded coffee space. And finally, how a Mokas franchisee can speed up their ROI among the various build-out options. This is going to be a fun one. All right, with that said, let's bring on our buddy here, Jason. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, how y'all doing? Happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. Sounds like a lot of fun. Drew, I heard what you're doing, and that's pretty exciting. I love the part about empowering and helping young franchisees out in the market. That's so awesome.
And
Definitely.
Jason, we've got this new movement of this new generation coming to franchising. The changing of the guard is happening right before our very eyes, Jason.
Yeah, it's exciting to see. You know, part of what excites me about offering our franchising model is we have some young folks, some young professional folks that are operating some of our restaurants right now that in the future want to be franchisees and want an opportunity to be able to have a model within our JRI Hospitality organization where they could go from operating one of our franchise locations to, moving over to a franchisee of potentially Mokas Coffee and Eatery in the future. So opportunity and growth for our young folks is just so exciting, especially when you find the ones that you see the fire in and they're asking questions, they're excited about it, and it gets you fired up and excited, and it just makes you want to create an environment for them to have some success and opportunity that maybe they wouldn't be able to have, without that connection or that history together. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Jason, before we talk about Mokas, I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit of a backstory. I want folks to know who you are, the work that you've done in franchising, and that leads us into Mokas, because I think it's worthy of the conversation on what your backstory.
Sure. Early in my career, while going to college, I was with another franchisee of Burger King at that point in time. And so got to have my first kind of understanding of what it was like to be a franchisee with the franchisor model, got to understand multi-unit, got to understand fast food, then later transitioned into a position with a full service restaurant, got some full service experience, and then really started getting excited about what I wanted to do. And coffee was a passion of mine. And in the early 2000s, if you asked what does somebody want to open or what are they opening, they're opening a coffee shop, right? It started to spread across the United States. at that point in time. And so I bought my first coffee shop, a 400 square foot coffee shop in the mall. I grew up on a small farm, didn't have a lot of resources to just, borrow a whole bunch of money from my parents or a bank. So had to start on a shoestring budget with that, borrowed some money from my grandparents, said, I'll pay you back in a year or two. And I did. And from that, everything we do today is existing. So Mokas started before I even started as a franchisee in Freddy's. It's just that Freddy's was the hot new opportunity at the time when we first started Mokas in the early to mid 2000s. And so we jumped on the opportunity, and I got connected with the founders. They gave me an opportunity to jump in. Store number 17 of all Freddy's that existed was my first store in Salina, Kansas. And from there, we've quickly grown to add other concepts, but also we've grown to be the largest Freddy's franchisee to date with 87 locations across 15 states. So we've got to learn so much by being a franchisee. But also, if you think about it, we got to participate in a lot of conversations with that franchisor because we were one of the early ones. And that was really fun and exciting. They have that open ear because they're also learning and they're wanting to grow. And it was the right founders of that organization to be open to having conversations. So a lot of fun. That's my history in a nutshell, with a lot of other fun learnings and rides in between, as you can imagine, in the hospitality industry. But that's it.
Jason, what would possess somebody with 87 franchise locations to say, you know what I need? I need another brand. And in this case, now I'm going to be a franchisor. How does that happen?
Yeah, us entrepreneurs, we have the spirit. And we surround ourselves by people that like to do the stuff that we necessarily don't like to do, right? I love everything about operating the restaurant business, but, I'm more of the vision guy, the guy that is excited about doing more. And when I think about doing more, it's about thinking about creating opportunities, not only for me and my family, but for others that work for us. And also, what does it do for these communities that we operate in? So I'm always trying to think and funnel things through, what our core values are, what our passions are, what our strategies are, so that we're aligned in where we go. And we don't just do it to do it, but there's a nice reason behind it. There's a heck of a lot of passion. And oh, by the way, a lot of great people that do a lot of things that, help me to look good. Let's put it that way.
Sure. I get it. Okay. From a timeline perspective, when did you start owning a Freddy's frozen custard franchise?
Sure. We opened our first one in 2009. We started development in 2008, opened up in March of 2009. And I remember buying the territory rights because it was in the early days of Freddy's. Like I said, there was only 17 when I opened Salina. And I remember them saying, I know you want to open one of these in your hometown, but you may want to open a second location someday. So why don't you go ahead and buy this territory down the road from Salina? And I said, okay, that makes sense. It's only $5,000 for the option. Why not? And, our first Freddy's was the second busiest opening of any Freddy's. I love the concept. It was simple, easy, high quality, high guest service. They drove their business on the 3 pillars, which I had believed in fully, which was quality, cleanliness, and genuine hospitality. How can it not work when those are your 3 pillars? And so within 4 months, not only did we have store 1 open and going, I had already got store 2 open and going, and off we went. And so that's when we first started in Freddy's, and that's kind of how the excitement started. And oh, by the way, our second store, it was number 28 of all Freddy's, and it was the busiest opening of all, and still to this day performs in the top 10% of all Freddy's locations across the United States.
Jason, so I would love to know, being such a large franchisee, taking that step into becoming a franchisor, you definitely had some learnings and some eye openings of why certain things are thought of certain ways. What were some of the biggest eye openers for you when you went into the franchisor seat of, wow, I didn't think of this way, or I thought of this a completely different way?
Yeah, I think it's understanding, the most important things of the business and that is, hiring the right person. How do you do that appropriately, right? Making sure that the right person's in the right spot. And then number 2, training and development. And if you can't check the box on those first, I call them the JRI high 5, number 1 and number 2, then you can't do anything else yet, right? You got to have the right person, you got to have the right place. You got to give them the training and development they need, and you've got to have the systems to then plug them into. A bad system will win against a great person any day over the long haul, right? So you have to have a system, and the better you can make that system, the better we're going to all perform. And so, but it all comes down to people and culture. But I believe those core values and the structures and the culture of structures and systems that we put in place really drives the ultimate people culture, how they feel about your business, how much fun they're having, and how much fun our guests are having at the same time. And, it's just a really fun place to be. So systems and the right people and the right training and development absolutely is the ingredients to success in about anything I've seen.
Well, Jason, I know there are people that are watching or listening to this show that maybe they also aspire to have an absolute portfolio of businesses such as you've done with Freddy's and now with Mokas. So would you mind sharing with us a little bit about, like, what does a leadership team look like when you've got 87 locations on one brand and as a franchisee, and now you're franchising another? How big is your team of folks?
It's big. We're north of 3,300 employees, I believe, right now for all concepts, upper level, in our corporate office, our support center, as we call it. JRI Hospitality is really the support center that drives the connection to each one of our concepts. Because we talked about culture a little bit, and it's all about communication, clear expectation, alignment, training, development, and continuing education and professional development for our folks that work in our organizations. That's what ties us all together. It's removing obstacles and creating the opportunity for us to spend the most time where the most time is needed in order to be successful for not only our team, but also for our guest experience. So there's a lot of folks behind the scenes. There's multi-levels of folks. And, it is a challenge, I think, as you build to get to a certain point. But once you get to that 40 unit across all segments of your business, it starts getting pretty fun because you have the resources to acquire some really special, talented people. And at the same time, you've developed a lot of folks that didn't have as much experience internally. And you put those two groups together and you just turn out with a really special group of folks to work with. Like we have passion for the business. A lot of them have grown up in it. And then a lot of them get to come and have fun with us to say, wow, look at this passionate group of people. And I bring all this experience, maybe from not a place I was happy working in, but I get to bring this experience to this anxious group of folks. And maybe where I came from before, they were just kind of, maybe took that person for granted a little bit because they were so much further along. So it's so exciting when people come on the team and and we see their value and they get to see their value, and it just becomes fun. And, everybody's focused on the most important thing, and that's our guest experience.
And what are some of the things you get to work on nowadays that you've got this, this organization at the size that it is?
Yeah, it's really focused on vision. It's focused on making sure that we're representing who we say we are in our communities with our teams to our guests. It's honoring the commitment of our team and creating opportunities for them in the future, like we've talked about. So every decision that's made, I think you have to think about your investors, if you have any, obviously your family. If your family is not happy and going the direction it needs to, then it's hard to really go execute and be there and strong for others. And then, of course, the most important, our guest and our team being able to have the tools and the direction and leadership that they need to execute for our guests every day. And then get out in that community. When our guests in a community come out and support us, what can we be doing out in the community to show that thank you by doing something that means something versus just, thank you, have a great day, come again. It's no,
Sure.
thank you, have a great day, and we'll see you out in the community doing great things for, the area where we're operating in and being supported by.
Well, your experience with Freddy's has obviously lend itself to be able to allow you to become a franchisor with, I would say, sort of a cheat code. You have the edge that most people don't have. I understand that one of the benefits that you've had is somebody who from Freddy's who is part of your board, right? As part of Mokas.
Absolutely. The co-founder of Freddy's, Scott Redler, he's actually on our board, and he came on board initially as our president of Mokas to put in some really important checks and balances before franchising, right? We wanted to make sure we were ready. We wanted to make sure the systems, check the test of time. And we want it to really be something that when you come in and look at Moka's Coffee and Eatery as a potential franchisee or something that your family may be signing on to doing, or all of these things, it's a big decision. It's an important decision. And we wanted to really provide value to the extent that we have 4 corporate locations right now, right? I mean, in the big scheme of things, the first franchisee might walk in and say, well, you don't even have any systems. You don't even have any of these things. We're excited because we have systems like a 200 unit coffee chain would have. And
I bet.
these systems are checks and balances of what we've used for now going on 20 years. So I think we've blown away the folks that have came in for Discovery Day and have potentially are on our list to become Mokas franchisees. I think they're just completely blown away with what we have to offer for 4 units. And if you go on our website, you look at any of our photography, our social media, come to any of our restaurants, you wouldn't say, oh, there's only 4 of these. This is just a local coffee chain. You'd say, oh my goodness, where do I sign up?
Jason, tell me about the experience, the footprint, the design. When I walk in as a customer, what is that experience like, and what was some of the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, when you walk into Mocha's, the first thing is it's about comfort. It's about thinking of, wow, I'm at grandma's house. I guess growing up on a small farm, that's a feeling that I can articulate, not like I come in, it smells good. Everything is a fresh smell. Everything's being made to order. You've got the smell of coffee on top of it, along with an all-day breakfast offering. So you're thinking comfort when you think about coffee, caffeine, the drink that you love. You're probably coming to meet a friend. Maybe you're coming on a date and it's the person you end up marrying. There's so many fun stories I've heard over 20 years. But if you just look at our logo, right, it's 2 upside down coffee cups, right? Or if you look at the handles of the coffee cup, the way they're portrayed, it's 2 heads in conversation. So everything about Mocha's has been built around connection. It's connection to, maybe I'm going to meet my future husband or wife there. I'm going to meet my future business partner there, or I'm just going to come and meet my friends there and have a great time. And oh, by the way, if I just want the coffee transaction and get in and out, we have a drive-thru that moves cars, at a staggering pace through the line, understanding that everything that we do is cooked to order. We're cracking every egg. This isn't fresh eggs out of a container, right, that are already whipped or anything. We are cracking the egg for you. And man, when you take a bite into that sandwich, you recognize that. So it's all of those things built into one, but the environment, like I said, is very relaxing, lots of earth tones, just a place where you can sit there and kind of escape to somewhere else with whoever you're sitting there with. And it may just be you and your computer, but it may be you and a group of friends. It may be you and a date, like I said. It may be you and your mom having coffee. Whatever it is, you really feel like, you're comfortable and your defenses are down, and you're in a place where anxiety isn't at the level that it normally is in your day-to-day routine.
Yeah, Jason, give me something in terms of what wasn't perfect starting out, because I know that there's other founders out there that are listening to you going, well, I can't be like him. He's been in franchising for a long time. He's got all these locations with one brand. He started another. I want to hear a side of the story where you guys started out and you were like, damn, we could have done this differently if I had to do this all over again.
Well, the one thing that I always, when a potential franchisee comes in, right, and they ask the question, what's one of the most important things that I can do in order to be successful out of the gate? And I said, number one, you have to be well capitalized, right? I didn't have that luxury. And, we have certain guidelines to our franchise disclosure document that kind of validates net worth and income levels and things like that. Obviously, we help offset some of that with our internal folks that we're able to convert to a franchisee because they've worked with us. We kind of take on some of their risk for them. But if it's a franchisee coming in looking for something, most of the time they're kind of they have the financial piece, right? Or they have the partners to be the financial piece. So being able to be well capitalized out of the gate would have probably overshadowed about all of the learnings that I had. The first restaurant I did is a Mocha's, was a 40-year-old Taco Tico building. And I don't know if you're familiar with Taco Tico, but that brand has came and gone, and then they're kind of upstarting again. But 40 years ago, they hauled those buildings in on a semi-trailer, and then they kind of like laid them out on a foundation and kind of sewed them together in the middle. So you can imagine when they turn 40 years old, what type of structure you're dealing with, right? And that's where I opened my first Mocha's, right? And then it was, you don't know what you don't know, right? You're figuring everything out. So all of your learnings and all of this experience and this conversation that we're having today, all is coming because, I got to experience it from the ground floor. And that's where entrepreneurial, spirited people learn. But the exciting thing about Mokas is when I sit down with someone that has a drive to take our business and say, I want to do that because of what you all stand for, what you do, the quality of products you have, all of that stuff I went through it's a flashback. And it's just really humbling that through all of those things that in most cases, 9.5 out of 10 people would have failed because of some really hard work, because of some really good people that supported me at that point in time. We made it, and we have this opportunity to share with others. Other young people, I'm really focused on getting, first-time entrepreneurs to be a franchisee of Mokas and to be able to build them up and give them these tools. So there's a lot of bad, scary stories. I remember the first time our espresso machine went down and I didn't want to stop serving lattes. So,
Right.
I mean, we're trying to figure out how to steam milk on an oven. We're trying to figure out how to steam milk any way we can because I never wanted to have to tell a guest no, even if a piece of equipment went down. Now, I've learned that that's, it's better to tell a guest no than try and figure it out from a quality standpoint and execution standpoint. But man, it was such a shoestring budget in the early days that we had to do about anything that we could to be successful. And it was very difficult, very hard. And I think that's what really fuels me to give folks the input from me and the time from me to bypass all of those learnings so they can just run off and be successful. So a little bit of a long-winded answer there, but man, there's so many things that came to mind when you asked that question. I couldn't just hone in.
Well, that's what I want to hear. I want to hear what went wrong because it couldn't have been perfect the whole way, but you've got, decades of experience and you see things now that a typical franchisor founder wouldn't see that's quote unquote with an emerging brand because you came from the other side of franchise as a franchisee. I'd love for you to share what are some of the red flags that come up when people are looking to buy a Mokas and you're kind of looking them up and down during Discovery Day because not everybody's great, let's face it. But there are certain things that I get from being a founder. Everybody's on their best behavior in Discovery Day.
Absolutely.
And it's also almost as good as it's going to get because everybody's on a first date.
Yeah, they're on their best behavior. Like it's what I always say when we're training someone new. We've done everything we could to hire the right person, right? But if it's bad during training, it's not going to get any better when they're going out on an island to run your restaurant on their own. It's just not going to get any better. So if there's any red flags in the first few days or weeks of training, it's the wrong decision for us. And it's probably the wrong decision for the person that's not performing. So let's just move along and be better for us and them, right? Holding on to people so too long sometimes we think it's just a detriment to us, but we're also holding them back from maybe finding what they could be successful at. So we always have to remember that it's not all about us. We also make tough decisions for the other person, right? And so the same thing with the potential franchisees. Now, it's much more risky, obviously, to sign on a franchisee, both for us and them, and get too far down the road without the proper vetting. So in Discovery Day, like you said, that's probably after we've engaged with them for probably a few months, maybe 90 days before we would ever even say, come in for a Discovery Day. Now, is that every person's a little different? Every group's a little bit different. But when we get this Discovery Day, I always say they're interviewing us and we're interviewing them. And when we go to the restaurant, I'm like seeing that, are they going to open the door for us? Or are they going to open the door for a guest that's walking behind them? Or are they going to see something blowing around the parking lot and just happen to pick it up? Are they going to be respectful to the person taking their order? What type of a tip do they leave the person that might be providing them some service? So I'm like looking at 1,000 different little things. The difference between success and failure, it's all little things. And so I'm looking at every little particular thing that I potentially can. And I don't share all those things, and I'm not being judgmental. I'm trying to gather all of this information to try and determine, do these folks have the ability and the thought process for what Mocha's Coffee and Eatery is, what it takes to operate one? Do they encompass all of those things that we embody that's making us successful? Because if they don't embody the things that are going to make Mocha successful, as much as we can see that before they sign on as a franchisee, the better for us and them. And then I always understand, What's your culture? What's your beliefs and how you treat your team members? Tell me some things that, even if you don't have a franchise right now or a business right now, tell me about some of the volunteering that you might do in the community. What's your passion about giving back? What are, all those different things? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your kids. What do you like to do on vacation? And what are your hobbies? All of those things are going to be indicators for me of, will they be a successful franchisee, without being judgmental. And I'm not doing it for me and us as much as I'm doing it for, man, when a franchisee signs on with us, I want them to be successful. And I don't want them or us to be in the way of that in any way, shape, or form. And I hope they're looking at us in that same way, right?
Right.
When we go look at that restaurant that we're taking them to try all the food on Discovery Day, man, our team better have it clean. They better be engaging. They better be doing all of the things. And you can't just turn that on a dime, right? When you walk into a restaurant, you know whether someone's faking it or if they're doing what they do every day in a
Absolutely.
second. And so that's kind of the process we go through, and that's kind of the things that we look for. And again, like I said, for the benefit of all parties, not just us, not just the franchisee, but at the end of it, we got to be great partners and we got to be aligned. And it should be, how can we hit the ground running the fastest? And that means
Right.
working all of those things out before we both agree on both sides of the table that, yeah, let's go do this territory. We're excited,
That was great. Great answer, by the way. There's no shortage of coffee businesses and coffee franchises for that matter. For me, what I'm hearing loud and clear is you make it abundantly clear that you're in the hospitality business. But I'm wondering, maybe even early in the process, when people are looking at a Mokas, what are common misconceptions of what it's like owning a coffee business?
Well, I don't think they understand the difficulty of being able to serve high quality food and high quality coffee drinks at the same time. Typically, one or the other is a distraction from that. If you think about coffee brands or coffee and food brands, a lot of times if I mentioned a brand, you'd tell me, hey, that's most of their business is probably food. Most of their focus is probably food. And you might be surprised how much coffee that they try to serve, or in their franchise disclosure documents say that they have a high percentage of coffee. At Mokas, one of the biggest challenges is we want to be cutting edge on our quality of food and the trendiness of certain food in our coffee and eateries. And at the same time, we want to be doing the same thing for coffee. And they're so different that to be able to execute both of those things at the same time with the same vision of freshness and quality and flavor and execution and speed of service and meet all the expectations of our guests. Listen, it doesn't matter if you're a steakhouse. If you put a drive-thru at that steakhouse, that guest is going to expect that you can make a well-done steak in 3 to 4 minutes, because that's all the time they have. So you have to be ready to execute, and you have to have smart menu development in order to offer something that in our world is about 50% food and 50% coffee, which I think that surprises a lot of folks right there. And to be able to execute both of those at a high level each and every day is going to take some focus. But at the same time, we have some really good equipment, some really good systems, some really good tools that assist in that as well, though.
Jason, what's the cost if someone's looking to franchise with Mokas?
If you were to do a renovation or an end cap with some tenant improvements, you're probably in the $750,000 to $1 million range. If you're going to develop your own real estate, obviously there's a return on real estate for you to do that. But that does increase your cost of furniture, fixtures, equipment, and build out a bit, because you're probably not getting tenant improvement dollars, because you want to take that income stream or your return on investment stream by developing your own real estate. And then when you're developing your own real estate, obviously you've got that dirt cost, right? What's an acre of dirt cost? So usually looking for an acre. If there's some cross parking access, it could be 3/4 of an acre. But so all those things considered, the different options, end cap, inline, or standalone, you're somewhere between $650,000 on the very low side to probably $3.2 million if you wanted to throw real estate and building all in that. If you're building inside of another building doing a renovation, you're probably in the 1.1 to 1.3 million range.
Without getting into profit margins, tell me about the ROI of doing that reno where you're part of a shopping center. You're on the end cap and you've got a drive-through, versus doing the build out? Like, how much more is it worth it? If I'm a potential franchisee and I'm like, all right, I can raise that money. I'd love to kind of get your take on how much more is it worth it that I'm going to start, putting a shovel in the ground versus just renovating a spot.
Yeah, I think that takes a lot of the strategy, and it depends on what your investment mentality is behind the franchisee. So I'll speak to it just a little bit differently. If someone's wanting to invest and they want a big investment or a big return in a combination of real estate and restaurant, then we do a lot of ground ups right now, but we're doing that because we're creating prototypes, right? And so we need to tweak a lot more than just maybe what an end cap will provide us. But if you're a franchisee looking to burn and churn, quicker opens, right? Quicker time to ROI, quicker time to that first dollar coming to the cash register, and also being able to get some improvement dollars negotiated in your lease from the landlord. End caps all day long with drive-thrus, as long as you still get the visibility control that you want of what our brand is, as well as the parking that you need and the stackability of cars in the drive-thru. As long as you can check the boxes on those, I'd say go find your end cap and let's start talking soon. We're going to be moving very quickly in that regards. When you go building, there is a time element of money that some people don't take into consideration. So at the end of that, and you go do a 1031 exchange, sale, lease back your property, all those different real estate models are out there. Sell a group of real estate portfolios to a REIT or something of that nature. It looks like a good payday at that point in time, but sometimes folks don't calculate in the value of time in their ROI. So end cap with drive-thrus, let's go.
What kind of traffic you look for in a territory?
Traffic, we're looking for probably 20,000 cars a day at minimum, to be really confident in our location and making sure that traffic is moving the right direction. Let's understand that 80% of our business happens before 2 p.m. 2 to 6 is just more of, hey, let's go have coffee somewhere. Let's go grab a smoothie after school, all those types of things. But lunch, breakfast food, as well as the high caffeinated drinks or energy drinks, all those types of things. 80% of our business is happening by 2 p.m. So you want to know which way the traffic's, that's morning traffic direction, easy in, easy out. High traffic count is great. One of our sites has as low as 12,000 cars a day. And we're happier in the 20,000 range. You get too many and then it's hard to get in and out. So just different things that we want to focus, and understanding we have 4 locations and we learn every location. And so we've been very strategic as the corporation and their corporate stores to build some different locations and some different demographic locations to try and be able to relate to some franchisees early out of the gate with only having 4 corporate locations. So we've already done that end cap, like you kind of asked about. We've already done one of those. Our other 3 are ground up, but we've changed the prototype around a bit. And we've also been in different maturity areas, more housing than business. And another one's more business than housing. And another one's how can we be close to school and hit mom and dad taking their kids to school and they want their caffeine fixed through the drive-thru. So we've really kind of created in a 4-unit franchisor model, different scenarios that could be valuable to that franchisee when they sign on.
Jason, now that you've gone from franchisee to franchisor, what's maybe one thing in the franchising process or maybe being a franchisor that maybe has surprised you weren't expecting, despite being a franchisee for as long as you had been?
Well, looking at it from the franchisor side versus the franchisee side, I can understand some of the challenges and some of the things I had in dealing with corporate, like some of my requests that I wanted, right? I mean, I couldn't understand, well, why is that so difficult?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're a brand protector as the franchisor, right? And you also have to be consistent. Otherwise, you're changing everything for everybody all the time. So I think a lot of it is just what folks request that they want changed in regards to maybe the franchisor franchisee agreements, what they might want changed on your building. Why wouldn't it be better if the sign was purple instead of, our brand colors? There's so many little different things that you wouldn't anticipate to be requests that have been.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was one of the challenges for me as a founder, is that I did get requests, some of them that were really valid, but you have to think about how does this affect the entire organization, right? The entire brand. You can't just do these one-off decisions, because if you do, and I know founders that are emerging that make these decisions like, well, I only have 1 or 2 locations, I can do it now. you pay a dear price going forward. You can't do that. You have to, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but I think when you're starting out in franchising and you're starting as an emerging brand, you have to think already as if you have 100 locations.
That's exactly.
Can I make this decision now if I had 100 or 250 locations? Not the, I can do it now, it's okay. That's not the way to go about it.
That's exactly right. And I would say that I'm really happy that I was established as a successful franchisee before I started franchising Mokas, because sometimes when you're a young franchisor, it's a time value of money. I need franchisees now. And so I'm willing to do whatever they ask me to get them, because once I have 100 of them, I can fix all these things that I've allowed. But that's not true. Once you get to 100, you're so busy on the next 100 that your first 100 is suffering because you were willing to be loosey-goosey, if you will. And so you're exactly right. I was just going through a conversation the other day with an answer or a determination that needed to be made. And that's exactly what I thought about is, nope, I'm not desperate. I don't need to sign a franchisee just to say I signed a franchisee and to get a quick check, right? We're trying to build something for the future. And so I have to think, what if I had 800 of these? What if when I have 800 of these, somebody wants to buy our organization? Are they going to want franchise agreements that are all over the place? And no. And so now we're not building Mokas to sell, but you also have to prepare for potentially when that day comes. You don't know what, in 20 years, I don't know, I'll still be here. What will my family want to do? I mean, there's so many things that I have to think of beyond just what I want to decide in that moment, right? And so it is very difficult, and you're exactly right. You have to think through so many things. And what I have decided is, we spent a lot of good money with a lot of good legal people to write these documents for a reason. And it was the reasons that we gave them that they wrote it that way. So it's kind of like if you put core values on the wall, well, aren't you doing that to follow those core values and they're important to you? So I kind of look at those agreements to the best of my ability that way. And of course, there are some small things that you can tweak, but they're very small and they have to really be of very little meaning at all if you're willing to change them. And that's just the belief I've had and kind of the strategy that I use when looking at those things.
I agree with you, because starting out, we'll be willing to, jump through a ring of fire sometimes to sell a franchise, but you can't have addendums all over the place that you have to go, I need to go to the file cabinet and see what were the addendums again we wrote for this guy. And it's starting off on a bad foot, especially. I think the point that you made that more emerging founders need to keep in mind is that eventually you are going to exit. And if you've got addendums all over the place, good luck in the renewal process, right? Because people aren't going to want to renew with the then current agreement when they have all these addendums and these exceptions to the rule that you made early on that suddenly you're not going to agree to 10 years from now.
Yeah, it's kind of like asking your employee to wear your branded uniform, and it's required, and this is what we need because it's the best look for our guests. And then the next day they come in out of uniform, you don't say anything about it, right? Now, when you try and reel that back in, what happens? Employee quits. Employee quits. What do you mean I have to wear that uniform? So same thing with our franchisees. We don't want to put them in a risk. And we also have to understand that we're doing a lot of things for them. They maybe don't realize that in the moment. So.
Yeah. Hey, back to Mokas. Jason, what are some of the trends you're seeing in the coffee business specifically that have changed over the last 20 years that, is just different now in terms of what customers are looking for that they weren't looking for when you're starting out?
Yeah. And anymore, I don't even call it the coffee business. I call it the beverage business, because from smoothies to energy drinks to protein added to all of these things to, hot, iced, frozen. Man, when I first started in the coffee business, it was like 10% cold type coffee and 90% hot. And now, if you just look at the whole beverage mix, it's completely turned upside down in regards to that. So you better be willing to be in front of trends and understand that you're always going to have your core menu of things, but you got to do a lot of limited time offers and you got to do a lot of seasonal menu stuff and things like that in our business, both on the food, and the coffee side and coffee and eatery, as well as, like I said, energy drinks, mushroom coffee. I mean, all these different things that I would never have thought of. You can't be the person that says, nope, this is my menu. This is what I love. This is what's always worked, and I'm not going to change. In the coffee world, coffee eatery world, you need to be on trend and you need to be ahead of the things that are going on. So we spend a lot of time going out there trying to determine, hey, what's the next thing that everyone's going to like? We've started in the Midwest. A lot of trends start on the coast, so we go spend a lot of time out there doing research and development. What's starting to happen that we need to be aware of? Go to a lot of coffee and beverage seminars or learnings in regards to what's the next up and coming thing. And then, being that we also own a country club, I need chefs. And so having chefs in our country club world has allowed us to have like a corporate chef a little sooner than what a 4-unit Mokas would be able to have as well. And oh, by the way, inside our country club, we have a state-of-the-art Prohibition era speakeasy that's focused on mixology of the future. So then being able to have a mixologist on board to also be able to come and give us some perspective on our drink recipes and things of that nature, we feel really good about being on trend and ahead of trend and really doing some things that others haven't even thought about yet, especially as we continue forward with our growth. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen is that, man, it went from steady Eddie coffee menu to, man, throw it as many things as you can at that menu and see if it sticks without confusing the guests, right?
Right.
You got to still guide them down as simple of a menu as you possibly can for execution purposes and for them to just, be able to decide, what do I want? But once they find what they want, man, it's hard to get them to try something else. Once they find their comfort item or the thing that they crave, man, to get them to try something else, you got to be really focused on that. But it's so cool because I can hear a car in drive-thru and sometimes by the sound know who it is and what they want just because they get it every day.
Oh, that's so cool. But it sounds like to me, one of the other advantages, the edge of your brand is you know how to pivot. Whereas somebody that was maybe just having their own coffee shop, wasn't part of your franchise brand, just thinks, well, I'm just going to keep rinsing and repeating. I'm too afraid to make a change. You guys are the ones making the change as the franchisor. You're not afraid to pivot. And that helps then again, of course, influences the franchisees. Here's what we found. And it allows for change to happen naturally, but also paying attention, listening to what's out on the street.
Yeah, for us being as young as we are, like I said, there's a lot of experience in the room that we have because of, number one, it's not easy to operate across 15 states consistently. That is very difficult. And we also got to open up some of the first restaurants of that concept in those states. That's not easy. And so you're doing a lot of things and learning a lot of things along the way about systems and people and the importance of compensating people appropriately. So much about how you can make your operator part of your business with an ownership share and different things of that nature. So I like to provide all of the systems and tools that we've learned over the last 20 plus years, whether it was in Freddy's, whether it was in the early days of Mokas, whether it's in, our Chompy's Delis that we operate out in Arizona, whatever it is and wherever I've learned it, I want to share the winnings, right? I don't want to overload them with 800 things. I want to say, man, if you focus on these 5 things, it takes care of all of those 800 other things, right? What is the things that we can focus on the most that avoids creating 1,000 things that we have to go focus on or fix? And that is really true. If you hone in on those things, you don't have to worry about a whole bunch of other stuff. And you'd never create a new system just because something's not working right, because you know why it's probably not working right. You're probably not using the system that's created for it to begin with. But everyone wants to go out and create something new. So I think along from menu and being trendy and not being afraid to pivot, like you said, to also being able to share all these years of knowledge and all the different things that have been difficult that we've been able to accomplish successfully in our organization is a true value to our current franchisee and our future franchisees and Mokas.
Jason, it sounds like you have so many great pieces in place with your systems and your resources and your people and your experience. What are your goals and where do you see Mokas going in the next 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, my goals and targets is not a race to how many franchisees we can have. So, I want to make sure that we take the time to vet. I want to create the opportunity for, our restaurant leaders that we currently have to be able to move into Mokas as an owner and a franchisee. I think that that's an exciting opportunity, but only if they have the passion for that. So our growth and our success in the future, number one, is creating the environment for success and luck to happen, right? And what I mean by that is giving our people opportunity and helping them to be successful in everything we do. We're naturally going to win. We're naturally going to grow. We're naturally going to be successful. And I see that same thing with Mokas and looking at potential franchisees the same way. And we're going to keep opening corporate stores. So Mokas is going to grow whether we sell a franchise or not. So if I have to say no to a potential franchisee that doesn't fit the brand, that's not going to slow down our growth because we're still going to be growing it. And so I think that's the exciting part because, we don't have to have anything outside of what we currently have in order to continue our growth. What we have to do, though, is always respect our people and create opportunities and more opportunities for them. And, that comes from being successful and giving back to the learnings and the growth of our folks. So we do accountability-driven leadership training inside JRI for all of our restaurant operating partners and assistant general managers that would be the future restaurant operating partner. We do professional development internally. We have our chief culture officer that brings so many of these values, and I plan on to offer that to our potential franchisees. They can bring their teams in and participate in these things if they see the value, right? I don't know that I'm going to twist their arm that it's required, but man, we are arming young people to be able to have tough conversations with other young people. There's only a 3-year difference, and it's between the ages of 16 and 19. Sometimes the 19-year-old's running the restaurant. Let's be real. That happens sometimes. And they're leading a 16-year-old. They're both still young adults, learning things, developing. And most likely that 19-year-old restaurant operating partner or leader hasn't, in most cases, in most organizations, been invested in to give them the skills to have a really good conversation that leads to a good end result, not only for them as the leader, but also for that 16-year-old that may just started yesterday as our cashier. And 10 years from now, they might be running one of our businesses if we do the right thing. If we do the right thing for them. So that's just a huge focus and a huge thing that I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Well, Jason, if someone was interested in opening a Mokas, where would they go?
So go to mokasfranchising.com or search up Mokas Coffee and Eatery. It's going to lead you to those pages. Thank you to Google search or whatever platform you're using. And then, of course, come to one of our restaurants, Wichita, Kansas, easy flights in. So many brands have started in Wichita, Kansas. Freddy's started in Wichita, Kansas, and now they're nationwide. Lots of franchising has started there. So we're excited about that hub. It's right in the center of the United States, easy to get to. And we really want you to come visit our sites if you're interested in being a franchisee. That's the best thing that you can do is to come in and see it in action. What's going on when we don't know you're coming, right?
That's great. Great. Yes. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. This was an awesome episode. Drew, thanks again for co-hosting. It's great having you on again. Great seeing you. Jason, I wish you all the continued success with Mokas.
It's wonderful. Thank you for what you all do for the industry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.